Good morning. My name's Bridget and I'm the vicar of the Good Shepherd and St Peter's, two churches in Lee. At the moment in church we are celebrating the season of harvest. It's the time of year when we think about where our food comes from, the people who grow it, pick it, pack it and produce it. And we give thanks to God for all of those people and for the food that we have. Now, much of our food comes from other parts of the world. I suspect that every week, maybe even every day, that we all enjoy foods that originally came from another part of the world. Let's see if you recognise some of these dishes. First of all, we have spaghetti bolognese, which comes from Italy. Next up, there's jerk chicken, which comes from Jamaica. Then next up, my favourite, lentil dal. Where does that come from? It comes from India. Then we've got some baguettes, which come from France. Next up, sushi. Does anyone know where sushi comes from? That's right, it comes from Japan. Then we have jollof rice. I love spicy rice. This is a popular dish in many countries in Africa, and there tends to be a bit of an argument about who makes the best jollof rice. And last of all, meatballs, which come from Sweden, but maybe you've enjoyed them at IKEA. Many of us enjoy eating dishes that come from other countries and other cultures. But even food that we consider to be British may have originally come from somewhere else. Take, for example, fish and chips. Fish and chips is a quintessentially British dish. When tourists come to this country, they often ask to try fish and chips. But fried fish was first introduced to this country by Jewish refugees in the 17th century. That's how our British tradition began. Now, refugees are people who are forced to travel from their own country to another country in order to find help or safety. Perhaps they're trying to get away from war or famine or some form of persecution, and so they go elsewhere in the hope of finding the help that they need. At the moment in our world, there are 30 million refugees, 30 million people who've been forced to leave their home to find safety. And around half of those refugees are children. Every year, a much smaller number than that come to this country in the hope of finding help. But what's it like to be a refugee? I was thinking about that question a few days ago, and I suddenly thought of the film Paddington. I wonder if you've seen it. I love Paddington. Paddington is the story of a young bear from Peru who travels by himself to London in the hope of finding a new home. When he reaches Paddington Station, he's lost and lonely and afraid until he's found by the Brown family, who take him home and look after him and welcome him in. Now, Paddington is just a story, but every day in real life, people like refugees arrive in London looking for a new home. And like Paddington, many of them feel lost and lonely and afraid when they arrive. Some of them don't speak very much English. Most of them have very little money. Many of them have only the clothes that they're wearing. Perhaps they don't know their way around. They've got nowhere to stay and they've got nothing to eat. It's a very frightening and difficult time. A few years ago, our church were worried about the refugees who were arriving in London and wondered what we could do to help. And so we decided that we would partner with a local charity called Action for Refugees in Lewisham in order to provide practical help for people who arrive in London. And so we set up a food bank, the Helping Hands Food Bank. And here's some of the food for our food bank. And a food bank is a place where people can go if they don't have enough to eat and they don't have enough money to buy the food that they need for their families. So this is how we help, by providing them with food. Every week we deliver food to 30 families in our area. Food like tin tomatoes or bags of rice or tins of tuna fish, basic foods that help to make healthy meals for people and their families. As well as that, we can give them things like nappies and toothbrushes and toothpaste, And we also let people have leftover fresh food that's been donated by supermarkets. That's really good because it stops fresh food from being wasted when it's still good to eat. Every day, loads of food is wasted by supermarkets. You can see in this picture quite how much gets thrown away every day. So we're really pleased that we can pass it on to people who need it. All of the food that we give away is donated to us by people like you. And we would love it if you would support our harvest appeal this year and bring in some donations of food for our food bank. We will then make sure that we pass it on to people in need. But not just that. Just like the story of Paddington, the way in which the Brown family made Paddington feel welcome and wanted, we want our refugee families to know that they're welcome and that they're wanted. We want them to know that there are people who live in this area who care about them, who understand how difficult life is and who want to help. A few minutes ago I showed you some pictures of food that we enjoy from around the world. Well, my favourite food comes from the Middle East. I love food like olives and pita bread and hummus. I'm so glad that refugees and migrants have come from other countries to this country and brought lots of good things with them. It makes me sad that people have had to leave their home country, but I am glad that they make this country so much better by sharing their food and their culture and their talents and their experiences with us. As we come to the end of this assembly now, why don't we take a pause and be quiet together for a moment? If it helps you, you might like to close your eyes. First of all, imagine your favourite food. I wonder, where did it come from originally? Now think of someone who might be feeling a little bit lonely or scared. What could you do to help them feel welcome and wanted and safe? Thanks for listening, and thank you for supporting our food bank. It makes a big difference and we are really grateful.